For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from Cape Town, South Africa. Good morning, Michael.
Morning. Basically, most of the major markets in the China area, in the Asia Pacific area, are closed because of Lunar New Year celebrations. However, Australia still open, up about 0.1%, and the Nikkei up almost 2%, but basically not an enormous amount of movement there, and nothing really from Wall Street to actually move on either, being fairly flat, which I'll come on to. As far as China itself is concerned, property bonds are actually making the property market relatively profitable at the moment, and investors who had been looking at that kind of market and then turned away when the difficulties seem to be supreme in the property market are now going back. However, US fund managers, here's the next big story really, are now turning away from China, and what they're doing is they're concentrating on the EU area, on the Eurozone, because they think that the Eurozone's move to greener and sustainable industries may be a firm pointer to where they ought to be investing. And also, of course, people put off from China because of COVID, because of the relationship between Beijing and the United States, and the United States Treasury, and also increasing regulation as well. So big question marks over China forcing, or rather attracting, fund managers away into the Eurozone. As far as the United States is concerned, stock futures relatively flat. They didn't have an enormous amount to think about yesterday. They do today, though, because they've got Johnson & Johnson, Verizon and Microsoft and General Electric, to mention but four of the major companies reporting. So we're well into another reporting season there. I'm going to talk and focus on big tech job cuts, which the list seems to increase every day. But Google has announced, has been defending the 12,000 that they're going to make. They had a sort of town hall meeting, as they call it, between them and their employees and so on, some of whom did not really get proper answers to their questions, which were, why is it us? What sort of criteria have you used to decide whom you're going to sack effectively? Spotify is joining that as well. Similar kind of percentage to Google, 6% of the workforce. Not as many, only 600, but still it's 600 jobs in the US. There's a company which is actually based in Sweden, but it's registered on the New York Stock Exchange. And I just continue to say this, that Apple is one of the companies that is not so far announcing any job cuts. And I think that's probably, as I was saying yesterday, because they didn't expand as rapidly as the others, and they've had a relatively smooth trajectory to where they are right now. Microsoft is increasing its investment in OpenAI. This is significant because this is where Microsoft thinks its growth is going to come from in the cloud. They call it, their system is called Azure. And they think that this will be the next major movement in computing, i.e. artificial intelligence, AI, robots doing your job, possibly. Apple is to make 25% of its iPhones in India. That was announced by Piyush Goyal, who is the Commerce and Industry Secretary of that particular country. They do make iPhone, or rather assemble iPhones in that country, but this is a big move for Apple, and really Apple moving to diversify away from the supply chain problems which have become evident from the COVID lockdowns in China and so on. I'm going to take you to I'm going to take you to Amazon. Now, what they're doing, this also concerns India. Whilst they lay off staff, they're also increasing their air cargo business to India as well. And whilst the company itself is laying off, I think it was 18,000 people. And also, don't forget that the first unionization of that particular company took place not that long ago in New York State, and that will still have to be something that's still being sought in the combated in the courts by Amazon, and they will have to deal with that before they lay off these various people, and therefore justify also why they're increasing their services to India. The EU now, this is from the German trades union IG Metall. We take notice of what IG Metall says because it's an important barometer of business confidence in Germany. And what they're saying at the moment is that they're reporting that Ford is going to slash a lot of European jobs and move its electric vehicle production and research to the United States. The unions are talking about 3,200 jobs. That is unconfirmed at the moment, but if it did, it would also affect Belgium and the UK. Speaking of the UK, the Prime Minister has ordered an ethics inquiry into the tax affairs of the former Chancellor, and he is now chairman of the Tory party, Nadhim Zahawi. He's saying that he had to pay HMRC, which is the income tax authorities, the tax authorities in the UK, after he had accidentally, he says, and he said he was rather careless in his tax affairs. You would have to be extremely careless not to know where several £million are going. That's my view on it. But again, a legal investigation is something which Rishi Sunak wants to take place because he can't misstep on something as vital as this. And two other things: oil relatively steady. There's a certain amount of, as the markets are putting it, exhaustion about the China reopening stories which are coming out of China, and until China crude demand actually bounces back, there will still be a demand for crude, but it won't actually reach the highs, which it may well do later on as that kind of demand rises. And just finally, I just wanted to tell you about Bitcoin. It's gathering steam again. It topped $23,000 yesterday because it's betting that the Fed will pivot. Now, this is quite a bet, isn't it? The Fed will pivot on raising interest rates. In other words, it will start to lower them fairly soon. That's quite a bet, I would say.
All right, real quickly, I'm coming to Nadhim Zahawi. I think like Piers Morgan would always say about Prince Harry's book, Spare Me. Nadhim Zahawi should spare us. He sold YouGov, which he was co-founder for a couple of years ago, for $100 million. And he wanted to say he doesn't know that you have to pay capital gains tax. Is that it now? When will this Tory lies stop? It stinks already. All of them reek of something extremely very gory and unthinkable that can only be thought about in phantasmagorical thoughts. I don't know your views on this, but this is just a lie.
My views are that it's like, I can remember interviewing somebody about Eurotunnel when Eurotunnel was being built and it was in debt. And I thought that redefined debt, the amount there were, and I think this redefines careless. Or are you careless about a few £million that you owe to the tax authorities? What part of careless is that? Wouldn't you know that? I'm with you on that. Yeah, of course.
All right. Just very quickly, two things. Still on Nadhim. Now, the Tory Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has said that he wouldn't resign or step aside whilst investigations are going on. What one would have assumed would be that as history would tell, for UK government officials or UK past government officials, they would usually step aside when such an investigation is going on. Why do you think this is Rishi Sunak's stance? And then the second part, very quickly, is on Apple and India. What's the cost implication for Apple products, especially iPhones, based on the fact that they manufacture in China, bearing in mind the cost effectiveness of that?
Well, Apple, let's deal with Apple first of all. Apple is one of those companies, I was discussing this with a fund manager yesterday, and Apple can sort of say you will pay X, Y, and Z, but you can pay so much for the product, and people tend to buy it. I mean, that's an extraordinary position to be in. Of course, that won't last forever, yeah. But they have never, as far as I'm concerned, they've always gone on the strength of their products rather than price competitiveness. So I don't know how that mix will actually apply. I would imagine this is very much in the front of Apple's brains as they decide to increase the production of the iPhone 14, which is their leading model, as I understand it, in India. As far as resigning is concerned, I honestly think that you don't. I mean, again, I'm not a politician. What do I know? If it were me, I wouldn't resign. I'd say, okay, let's find out. Let's have an independent look at what this guy is supposed to have done, what he's supposed to have been slightly careless about, and then we will make big decisions about where we go. I think if you resigned at every setback, then you wouldn't be a prime minister for very long. Those are my personal thoughts about it. Again, I'm not a political expert, and I'm not a prime minister either. I'm just a humble observer. But that's what I'd be thinking right now.
Okay, I think on the issue of the Tory party chairman, it's not just the Tory party chairman that is in the eye of the storm. It's the entire party. It's all about ethics. The Tories don't get it, do they? Even the Prime Minister himself, she has questions to answer about the appointment of Richard Sharp as BBC chairman. But do I think that this will end well for the Tory party chairman? Maybe not. But even the Prime Minister himself has questions to answer with regard to the BBC chairmanship appointment. But I wanted to ask you about the yellow metal, which seems to be doing well right now because of the softening of the dollar. But the part of it that I need, I want you to help us clarify is this story today that, investors are waiting for U.S. economic data. What does U.S. economic data that we are expecting by Thursday got to do with the price of yellow metal? That is gold.
Sorry, are you asking me about cryptocurrencies, or are you asking me about?
No, I'm asking about gold. Gold.
Oh, okay. I mean, all I can say is that there's been a general push, hasn't there? I was reporting, a couple of weeks ago about the push to $3,000 an ounce. I mean, it may well, it may not. I think that if the dollar weakens, then people tend to buy gold if they're worried about general security. If they're not worried about it, then they don't buy gold, and they look forward to an increasing dollar, a dollar increasing and decreasing rather, and then assume that means that the Fed will be driven to lower interest rates and et cetera, and then equities start to get better. I mean, I really wouldn't want to press it right now. I think gold used to be quite a useful kind of indicator. I'd far rather look at things like copper and silver right now, because I think they have a direct use within the industrial advance of countries. I appreciate that I'm not answering your question directly. I just don't think it's a very, very strong indicator right now. I report it because it happens to be something of which there is a gold fix every day, as you know, and people tend to regard it with a degree of reverence. I honestly don't think it's worth it. I think it's very impractical, and I don't think it tells us a great deal, simply for all the reasons I've just said.
Well, so cryptocurrency, up today, down tomorrow, the volatility continues. Thank you very much, Michael.